guests are still coming in, I think we're going to go ahead and start our webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you from around the world, and a special welcome to our Syrian guests, both in the country and in the global diaspora. I'm delighted to welcome you to this seminar on transitional justice and atrocity prevention in Syria. My name is Max Pensky, and I am the co-director of the Institute for Genocide and Mass Atrocity Prevention, located at Binghamton University, the State University of New York in the United States of America. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First of all, let me say that Binghamton University, and so the origin of this webinar is located in upstate New York, on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and in particular the Onondaga Nation. We acknowledge their stewardship of this land as the fire keepers for the Haudenosaunee Confederation. A couple of notes on the procedure of our webinar today. I'm sure a lot of you have been to many webinars. Ours doesn't work like most of them. We ask our participants not to bring prepared remarks, not to bring PowerPoints or slides, or make formal prepared presentations of any kind. Instead, we structure our webinars as conversations between and amongst the panelists. And so that I hope that you'll find will be a much more refreshing, spontaneous, and frankly real and productive way of exploring the enormous topic that we have in front of us today, which is how Syria in the post-Assad moment can both pursue transitional justice and decrease the risk of the recurrence of atrocity violence. The procedure will work something like this. Our panelists will have their conversation for roughly an hour. At that point, we will begin to accept questions from you in the audience through the Q&A function. The chat function will not work for you, but the Q&A function will. So please feel free to click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. Given that this is a very large webinar, we can't possibly hope to get to all of your questions, but we will absolutely make every effort to either answer your question directly or to cover the topic that you're asking about. So please, you don't have to wait until the top of the hour. You can submit questions at any time. Let me also remind you that we do have very skilled actual human interpreters, not AI, for this event. So you can listen to this event either in English, which I'm speaking now, or in Arabic, or both. If you go to the interpretation icon, which is the little globe icon at the bottom right of your screen, you can click on that and select from the two menu options, either Arabic or English. If you would like to hear everybody speak in the languages that they're speaking, whether English or Arabic, just don't use the interpretation function at all, and you'll hear it without the interpretation. All right. So let me first briefly let you know who is here with us. We have a very distinguished panel of experts to talk about transitional justice and atrocity prevention in Syria, and I'm looking forward to introducing them to you. First, I'd like to welcome Fadel Abdelghani, who is the Executive Director of the Syrian Network for Human Rights. This is an organization that he founded in 2011. He holds a master's degree in international law from De Montfort University in the UK. He is the awardee of the prestigious 2023 Franco-German Prize for Human Rights. Over the past 13 years, Mr. Abdelghani has significantly contributed to hundreds of reports and investigations involved in analyzing and exposing gross violations of fundamental human rights. He also authors research papers, contributes to news reports, and addresses international forums, including the UN Security Council and the Human Rights Council. Next, I'd like to welcome Assad al-Achi, who is a Syrian economist and civil society activist, and currently president of the Syrian Center for Media and Freedom of Expression, and co-coordinator of the Syria Resource Group. He was previously the director of Beitna, a civil society, a support organization working on democratic transition in Syria and empowering civic actors through grants and capacity building. Prior to that, he was a senior economist in Aberdeen, Scotland. He's a founding member of the local coordination committees in Syria. He joined the Syrian revolutionary movement in 2011. He graduated from the American University of Beirut with a bachelor's in business administration and holds an MBA as well. And he joins us from Brussels. Welcome, Assad. Bassam Al-Ahmad is a Syrian human rights defender and the current co-founder and executive director for Syrians for Truth and Justice, an organization concerned with documenting human rights violations throughout Syria, which was launched in 2016. He also worked as a consultant with the International Federation of Human Rights, formerly at the Violations Documentation Center in Syria, one of the first centers to document human rights violations in Syria after the uprising broke out in 2011, operating as a project of the Syrian Center for Media and Freedom of Expression. He graduated from Damascus University, which was the trigger that helped him get involved in the public oppositionist activities against the Syrian government and the Assad regime. Welcome Razan Rashidi, who's the executive director of the Syria campaign, which is a human rights organization dedicated to assisting Syria's heroes in their battle for freedom, justice, and democracy. She has nearly 2 decades of experience working in development and humanitarian programs, advocacy campaigns, and cultural initiatives to drive change. Since 2005, Ms. Rashidi has worked as a media specialist in a variety of UN offices across Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, and as a consultant with numerous other Syrian and international organizations in the field of media training. She has a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of Damascus and a master's from Goldsmiths University in London. Welcome, Razan. And finally, Beth Van Schack, who is a fellow at the Center for Human Rights and International Justice at Stanford University. Prior to returning to Stanford, Ambassador Van Schack served as Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice in the U.S. State Department. The Global Criminal Justice advises the Secretary of State and Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights on issues related to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Prior to returning to public service, Dr. Van Schack was the Leah Kaplan Visiting Professor in Human Rights at Stanford Law School and directed Stanford's International Human Rights and Conflict Resolution Clinic. Welcome, Ambassador Beth. We have so much to talk about. The introduction that I have is going to be very brief. It is simply this, that when we talk about transitional justice as a global mechanism, we talk generally, and this is the approved language of the United Nations, we talk about transitional justice also contributing to guarantees of non-recurrence. That is to say, transitional justice must be understood not just as not raising risks of future violence, but we have to find ways, we have to implement policies, we have to work out solutions so that the pursuit of justice, and particularly justice for victims and for perpetrators, can be made into a contribution to reducing the risk of the recurrence of atrocity crimes. It's a tall order. It's a tall order for any society. In the case of Syria, I think it is an exceptionally great challenge. And I've asked the 5 of you here to talk through the various facets or dimensions of that challenge. And let me just begin, and Razan Rashidi, let me just ask you to start, and then the others can chime in. I'm going to make a very cynical statement, and I want you to tell me why I'm wrong. The cynical statement would be this. The situation in Syria right now is so fragile. Armed conflict amongst competing groups, and there are so many competing groups who have the potential for armed conflict, is so great. The regional pressures from Israel, from Iran, from Russia, from Turkey are so profound. The implications of American and European donor funding being slashed is so great that there are simply more pressing needs than justice in Syria, that justice should be delayed and other things should happen first, that Syria has neither the tolerance nor the capacity to try to seek justice for victims and perpetrators. Am I wrong about this? Which I certainly hope I am, otherwise it'll be a very short webinar. Am I wrong about this? And if I'm wrong, tell me how to think about the role of transitional justice in a country with such challenges as Syria is facing right now. Thank you.
Hi, Max. Thank you for organizing this interesting conversation. And I'm definitely going to say that you are wrong. And I guess even the current, if you're following the updates from Syria, every single day we are being proved by example how the lack of accountability and justice and truth for the majority of the war crimes that were committed in Syria is feeding into the peace and stability of today. And I would say as well that, like, I just want to share small things. The minute I went back to Damascus, my city, like right after the fall of the regime, like in maybe 10 days afterwards, and it was the first time, since 2018, I crossed the border, arrived to the central city, and the first thing I did is went to a protest with the family of the disappeared in Syria outside the courthouse in Damascus. And the faces I've seen there are of ordinary women, children, young people, elder men and women who are, who come from very diverse background, very diverse economic situation as well. Some of them have really, got there with bare minimum, like I don't think they even could afford transportation services, and they wanted to stand outside this symbolic place, Al Hijaz station in Damascus, where, previous protests happened, and they were like simply carrying the photos of their loved ones. A few months, or like last month, actually, as part of the Syria campaign, we organized a protest in Dar'a, where also the first protest happened, and you could see women carrying like even their mobile phones or like very old photos of their children and loved ones. They didn't have the means even to print them, coming to us in the protest in this, southern part of Syria, where really the economic situation is dire. So, and honestly, as a campaigner myself and a human rights defender, I was blown away with the messages that they are carrying without being, trained or being, or accessing anything that speaks about what transitional justice is by nature, like, or they're carrying all the messages. We want to know what happened to our loved ones. Not gonna accept that they're dead until we see like proof or have more information. We support each other, and this is very critical in transitional justice, how victims and survivors connect and support each other. I have, so many things I want to reflect, but I just want to state one thing in relation to your opening remarks as well, and your cynical question, and how to think about transitional justice today. I want to stress at the beginning of this conversation, and I see myself repeating this over and over, that the fall of Assad has not been a result of a military operation that lasted 11 days. It is, the results of the fight of families, of victims, of human rights organizations such as Fadls and Bassem, of, amazing work that Assad has did to support civil society organizations. And what kind of, how do we think about it? What helps me every day to tackle all the challenges that we are facing? I cannot hide the fact that we are facing challenges on a daily basis. We joke now and say we are on a roller coaster, like on a daily basis of what's going on in Syria. But it is Syrian civil society. It is this community of people who believe in justice that will, and will continue to carry the fight alongside the victim and the family associations, which, as I reflected now, they are beyond the organized groups. They're everywhere in the streets, everywhere in Syria. And let's stop here.
Well, yes, they were everywhere, Razan, but they're nowhere to be seen anymore. For the past couple of months, the whole discussion about, the families, the survivors, etc., has died down. especially after the massacres on the coast, and then the recent massacres in the south in Sweden. Uh, so plus, you have on the flip side the actions of the Syrian government, the current Syrian authorities, whether it's readmitting Mohammed Hamsho and doing a kind of a settlement with him, or more worryingly, the Fadi Sakr, who's the head of the so-called National Defense Forces that were, one of the main militias supporting Assad in his massacres against the Syrian people. We have the talk from the government or from the authorities around the importance of transitional justice and the importance of even prevention, and non-recurrence. I was surprised to hear from Minister Shibani at several instances talking about prevention, talking about non-recurrence, etc. Yes, I love what I'm hearing. I hate what I'm seeing. And that has been kind of a constant among a lot of the Syrian human rights actors for the past couple of months. We hear everything we like to hear, but we see everything we hate to see. And the actions, unfortunately, are speaking much louder than the words. So in this context, I want to be as cynical as Max and say that the justice discussion is kind of slipping away. And it's slipping away because there are new massacres being committed too. So we have new grievances that are being created, whether they're grievances related to sectarian conflict and on the coast to the sectarian conflict in the south, or they are grievances related to the dire economic situation that continues to blow the country away. And there I cannot, I know people accuse me of linking everything to sanctions, but I have to link everything to sanctions. And um, as long as sanctions are in place that, don't have a legal basis anymore, given that and the Assad regime is gone.
أخذ
And I'm
عين
not talking about the
الاعتبار
foreign
ذهاب
terrorist
النظام.
designation, that's a
أتكلم
different story.
عن
I'm talking about the sanctions on the
أنا
Syrian
أتكلم عن
government. I'm talking about the
القيود
sanctions
أو العقوبات
on the
على
Syrian
الشعب
state.
السوري
As long as those sanctions continue
المسلم.
to exist,
ما دام
economic
هذه
situation will continue to degrade.
العقوبات موجودة فإن الوضع
Therefore, militias
سيظل
will find
هكذا.
ground
إذن
to recruit,
الميليشيات ستزيد
militiamen,
فريقا،
and atrocities will continue.
وكذلك
So
الفظاعات ستستمر.
we can speak a lot
ممكن
about
أن نتكلم
justice and
كثيرا
transitional
عن
justice
العدالة
as a way.
والعدالة
Assad,
الانتقالية.
let me just interrupt you for a
دعني
moment. I think we are having a little bit of an audio
لا
issue
عندنا
with the
مشكل
interpreters.
الآن.
Yeah, we suddenly switched from English to
الآن
Arabic.
أوكي.
Yeah, so we might want to reset that so that we suddenly just switched from English to Arabic, which I don't understand, so I couldn't tell what you were saying. Can you try? Can our interpreters are we all set to start up again? Assad, let's give it a shot, shall we?
Sure. Can you hear English now?
That's
Perfect.
better. Thank you very much.
I'm just gonna, summarize what I said. Well, I was talking about new atrocities being committed again and again, and then I was referring to the sanctions situation and the fact that the continuation of the sanction regime on the Syrian government, and I'm not referring to the foreign terrorist designation, that's a different story, but I'm specifically referring to the sanctions on the Syrian government, who that do not necessarily have a legal basis anymore, given that, the reason why those sanctions are imposed has disappeared or has moved to Moscow. So these sanctions are hampering any efforts for economic recovery, which is creating the ground for new militias to appear and militias to be able to recruit militiamen, and therefore atrocities are continuing. I know this is kind of a cyclical exercise, but getting into a proper discussion of transitional justice requires some form also of economic justice. And as long as Syrians will see that their economic situation continues to deteriorate, it will be very hard to engage with them on a discussion on justice.
So thank you. I mean, it's so distinctive of transitional justice in so closely following a transition that there's all kinds of discussions of chickens and eggs, carts and horses, bootstrapping, and so often we try to imagine transitional justice mechanisms creating the very conditions that they would require for success, and I think that this is true here. So I wanted to ask our other panelists. So Razan has really expressed the deep desire, in fact, the demand for both accountability for perpetrators and truth, the whereabouts of the disappeared, on the part of the Syrian population, which is an absolutely existential demand. Assad has reminded us that that's not necessarily yet been matched with actual concrete steps by the interim government. How else can I ask maybe Bassam to weigh in on where you would place yourself in that particular spectrum? How do you see the prospects, the short-term prospects for accountability for perpetrators in particular? If we can linger with that question for a moment.
Thank you. I think I will express myself in Arabic better.
Okay.
يعني المشكلة الأساسية يعني
the main problem. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the intervention, Razan intervention. And my friend Assad, the problem that we are in front of a unique model. It's a model that say things, beautiful things, in the tongue of the foreign minister, who he said kind words, and that goes along with the people. They want to hear the Europeans, the Americans, the West in general. This model and the opposite, or the contrary to what is being said, we are talking about a gap between the theory of what the government claim, who thinks that it's inclusive and that there is a national conversation. We saw there is a declaration of the Constitution about, according to other organizations, it gives all the authorities to the president, which means it constitutes to a new tyranny. I think that, to be honest, there are Syrian organizations in December. I had more hope for transition, the transformational transition, but the actions that the government did, I'm talking about the slaughter in the coast, and these slaughters that the colleagues talk about, this give us an impression different. These slaughters, it gives a point of view about the future of Syria. A lot of people think that the urging against the Alawite group, but these events, the Jeremiah events, the Sahfana and the Sueda, this shows, and the even in 2011 there were a lot of violations, especially from the former regime. There is always a hatred speech that comes before it. So this discourse has always been come before the violations. This is similar, but it's against specific minorities. The Syria, there is a lot of discourse about sectarian, especially the Kurds, clues. We in the Syrian group, even the democratic Syrians or the activists, they are protected from this course. Maybe the Kurds will be the next target. So I'm trying to say there is a gap between the theory and what is said and the announcement and what's going on the ground. What the from my point of view, it's these assignments, these appointments, it is just for the people who are close in ideologically close to the government. These appointments and these measures, I wish I am wrong. I think this is not constituting what we see. Some of those who were involved, the last one was Hatim Shakra, who was the main accused of killing the Hadim Khalaf, the Kurdish activist, and others before him. Now, as Assad said, there were people who had violations and they did crimes with the regime, and now they're in the government. They become part of this government, unfortunately. This may be a pessimistic point of view, but this is what's happening. I think the steps on the ground doesn't show that we are going towards transitional justice. Now, the Assad regime is gone, but this is, we need to do this like a bridge to build something new. We want to go towards something
Yes, thank
good.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I
Yes.
just want to come in to follow up on Bassam's
حبيت
comments, and I
أن
think I do agree. All you
أتكلم
indicators we
عن
have been
ما
seeing
قاله
in terms of
بسام
practice. I'm not
فيما
even
يتعلق
hearing
بالتطبيق.
anything positive
أنا
when
لا
it comes
أسمع
to
أي
policy, when
شيء
it comes to transitional
إيجابي
justice, even
عندما
the
نتكلم
narrative
عن
of it.
العدالة
And I do
الانتقالية.
believe and think that at the
وأعتقد
heart of even
أن
the
Can I,
process
I'm sorry, I'll have to stop you again because we've once again switched to Arabic. So we're going to need to have you start again with the translation function corrected. My apologies.
should I keep original? Is it working?
نعم.
Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Razan,
So
please go
I
ahead.
just actually wanted to follow
أنا
up on
أريد
what
أن
Bassam said
أن
and
أعلق على ما
you know,
قاله
re-stress.
No,
بسام.
I'm sorry, we're still hearing the Arabic, but not the English. So it may be that we need just to switch to English. I'm sorry. Razan, can you maybe go ahead in English, please, until the interpreters get this sorted? Thank you.
Okay, so should I switch to English?
Please,
or
if you don't mind, while the interpreters find out what the problem is. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, just to maybe stress what Bassam said, but also add to there's like a vacuum in information for Syrians, which are which is a very important you know, element for transitional justice, but also to peace and stability. And I want to take this comment that Bassam ended with, is that this is not, you said Bassam, this is not the shekel or like the format that we fought for in terms of justice. And I know, Fadl, you've spoken about your vision at the center of SNHR about transitional justice. Maybe you could, tell us a little bit on what would have been maybe our dream scenario, let's say. We keep hearing, and I just want to maybe make sure the audience is aware, even us as actors in this field, we don't know what's going on. We hear one news that there will be a committee for transitional justice, another committee for the missing. Maybe it will be under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or under the Ministry, like it's not clear for us, and we're not being asked as civil society actors, as experts. Yes, we have been working and studying and learning and doing a lot of this work to help even build this pathways or transitional justice mechanisms. So I don't know, Fadl, if that's clear.
They excluded all of our experience, unfortunately. They didn't consult with us, and I don't think that they have vision toward transitional justice in Syria. I think they are maybe they have experience in battlefield, a little bit experience in economic on those files, but in laws, in international law, that's very obvious about their declaration. Okay, we are intended to formulate the Transitional Justice Committee. What is this? Or intended to formulate the Enforced Disappearance Committee. So there is no vision at all. Those are an indication. And actually, we published two visions, and those visions for the authority to build on it, we don't have direct communication. I requested multiple times to meet with the president or the foreign ministry. This is not the job actually for the foreign ministry, but because he's an influential guy, so I want to meet with him to address those, to highlight how is the process should be. We are not also, we heard from friends that why you published, how is the political path should be. Oh, you are not a politician. We are not. This is not our vision that we are intended to as a party move on it, because we are not party. But this vision, how it should the authority move from we call it, and this is also an argumentative term from to achieve political pluralism from the revolutionary victory. Okay, if and a lot of mistakes being happened here. So if this path didn't move as it should be based on law, then the transitional justice path wouldn't, because transitional justice path, it's genuinely linked with the political path. How is this like more explanation? The authority the dialogue form or conference is a fake one. Dialogue should be extended for years. Then how is the governing body should be, because in this period transitional justice academic taught us that academic theory taught us that those period should governed by participation, not by one party. It should be built based on that, because here we don't have an election. So who is won? If we agree that military won, I agree with what Razan said. It's not only a military, it's a struggle and fight from the civil society mainly. So the main holder of this victory is the civil society, is the civil society organization who's fought human rights and in many aspects on aid. Okay, so if we, even though they should participate and they should call for other Syrian to be part from this government, and they didn't, then how is the temporary declaration being announced? You cannot nominate a committee to draft or to write a temporary constitutional and then you ratify it. Where is the diversity here? And then lots of criticism and right comment about even the temporary constitution.
Thank you.
Based on that, Transitional Justice Committee should be established based on maybe in the I need to build based on this statement. You are also, or your question was not cynical, Max. We are facing tremendous challenges, not only the economic one, as Assad said. There is a real security threats in Syria. There is also a lot of remnants. It's not the Assad remnant is not only a military one. We are facing lots of previous regime remnant. They are like against any movement toward justice, against any movement toward democracy. They are fighting us economically, society, and they are also trying to influence the authority. So we became the democratic Syrian a minority. And I might explain a little bit how the path should be. If it didn't be like that, this is not a transitional justice. This is not a justice at all. So the procedure is more important than the statement, even if the statement was excellent or wonderful. I don't care about the statement. I care about the procedure. I monitor the procedure. The procedure should be an engaged and a participated one. We should call the minority to be engaged, and those minority are not a religion one or an ethic one. Not at all. Those are a political. We need to look at them as a political body in between our community, not a religion one, because there is no parties in Syria represent those. There is no party represent the Druze or Alawite or Kurds so that they are assured that their requirement is included in the constitutional committee, in the government, and in the local and in all of the future decision. If we didn't build the path like that, there will be no justice in Syria. And I will follow up later on based on the question.
Thank you very much. Beth, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for including me in this conversation. And I really appreciate the insights from my Syrian colleagues who have a much better sense of what's happening on the ground. But just to ping off some of the points that have been made, this gap, this disjuncture between ideal and sort of perfect archetypal transitional justice and the reality on the ground is a feature of every single transitional society in which I've worked. And my work has always been global, and my portfolio when I was in government as the ambassador was also global. So we see this everywhere. So this is not unique to Syria. Nonetheless, it's an extremely challenging environment right now to imagine what a genuine inclusive transitional justice process would look like. Because as has been described, so many of the early steps have been problematic, including integrating pro-Assad members into the government, even members associated with ISIS. Obviously, there's a pragmatism to that, right? You want to keep your enemies closer in order to be able to try and bring about stability. At the same time, we know that never lasts. And as was mentioned, many of these elements are trying to destabilize the society and potentially even return it to something that was more approaching what was in place under the Assad regime. So what is so important is the idea of not only signaling to the community that there will be a genuine commitment and an investment in transitional justice, but also taking visible, concrete steps in that direction. Neither action alone, nor statements, beautiful statements, are enough. I've worked in societies where the government is actually doing genuine things, but the community doesn't understand it. They don't see it. They don't know what's happening because they're not part of a communication with their own government. And so they're disappointed or they're upset, and you see acts of vengeance happening. The whole point sometimes of many of these transitional justice mechanisms is to provide a formal process to deliver truth, justice, and other guarantees of non-repetition, so that individuals, families, and communities don't feel like they have to engage in self-help, don't feel like they have to engage in acts of private vengeance, because they know there will be a process. But they need to have faith in that process, and they need to see concrete steps. And so what is recommended in terms of best practice is, as many have described, a participatory, inclusive process. So establish a committee of some sort that is representative of the different communities within that society, and ensure their voices are heard either through focus groups or population-based surveys, something that allows them to articulate what their vision of justice is, and then build a set of institutions that to the best degree possible, also in keeping with international human rights, reflects and respects those priorities. So we are hearing beautiful statements, but we're not seeing that sort of community-based participatory process where people can weigh in on what they want to see, what balance of truth versus justice, what they see as key institutional reforms, et cetera. And this will be critical for instantiating stability and security within the community, because otherwise it will remain as it is now, which is very uncertain, very unstable, and people are extremely worried about backsliding.
Well, I just don't want this to turn into also a bashing of the current Syrian authorities. Let's not forget that they've only been in place for 5 months. So we cannot expect magic in 5 months in a country that is as devastated as Syria. And for me, as a person who was prevented from going back to Syria for 14 years, just the fact that I could put my my foot back in the country, in Damascus, be with my parents at home, while feeling safe and not persecuted, was an achievement. Is it the definition of transitional justice? Of course not. But it is one step forward. The good talk that we're getting from Minister Shibani is one step. Is it enough? Of course not, but it is. But it is one step. The fact that they're recognizing, they're committing themselves in front of, the at the highest levels, whether in his speech to the United Nations Security Council or in his speech to the United Nations General Assembly. In both speeches, he officially announced that the Syrian Arab Republic will establish a commission for transitional justice and a commission on missing people. I think one of the roles that we need to, as civil society actors, we need to start having is holding Shibani to his words. Minister Shibani, you've committed this and this and this in New York. Where are the results? We want you to succeed, because we believe that the success of a transition in Syria is a success for all Syrians, but we will hold you accountable to everything that you're saying. And so part of the accountability is not only accountability to the crimes that have been committed. Of course, that is necessary, but part of the accountability is the accountability of current government officials that are in place, that are supposed to be, managing somehow this process. But we can focus too much on legal and criminal accountability, but I want to move also to other aspects of transitional justice, if you allow us, Max, which are
but before that, Assad, like if I might jump in.
One second, but
Okay.
around truth telling, around reparations, etc. Because Fadl, it will be very important also for you to feed into that. And I think we don't need the Syrian government to establish truth commissions.
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
And to engage in truth conversations. It's upon us as civic actors to take the lead on that. So yes, I can sit here and bash the Syrian government for failing to put in place a transitional justice process. But what have I done as a civic actor to engage or to put in place a transitional justice process that can basically work in parallel or in tandem with whatever the government will put in place. SNHR did a first step. They published a vision.
Okay,
but
Fadl, over to you in a second, but just let me follow up.
Yeah, like I don't want the government to establish the Transitional Justice Committee. If it's established, the government is aside. It should be independent. It should be established by the parliament. So the government, it's a transitional path, but it's a justice path. But at the same time, it's a political one. I understand that. We have a lot of experience, but we want the government only to manage, not more than that, not to engage, not to formulate, not to establish, and not to nominate. We nominate. this is not how it should. If we want a successful path, it should be independent committee. How it should be independent? It should be a law from the parliament. The parliament and then the establishment of the parliament, so that we are now preparing a vision how the parliament should be, not as it's prepared based on this temporary constitution. What they mentioned, that the president will nominate 30%, and then committee nominated by the president himself will the 75%. So the remaining from the parliament will be established based on those committee. So that's how should not be the parliament being formulated in this period. If the parliament being formulated, then the law based on the will be also independent. We need an independent body, because we have okay, Assad committed 90% and his allies from the total violation, but there is 10% from, and we need to send a message for all victims, not only for the victims, but all the Syrian community as well. So there is a victims, not by Assad, by ISIS, by opposition, by HTS, by everyone. So we need, and even the establishment of a local or a hyper court. This also should be based on law from the parliament. How this court will be established. Even so, there is a major role to the parliament in this path. And then this committee for the revealing the fate of the missing person. What is this committee? I didn't hear about it in all of my life, in all of the experience. There is a committee under this committee. Maybe there is a recognition, and we did that in our vision, because we have like approximately 170,000 missing Syrian. Okay, so to recognize that, to admit that, to acknowledge them, there is a specific committee under the Truth Committee. Okay, so this is a branch, but the main committees, it should be the accountability, the truth and reconciliation, then the redressing and the memorialization and reformation.
I wanted to, Fidel, if I can break in, I wanted to follow up on that particular point, because Assad had also mentioned the idea of the challenges of the composition of a truth committee. And I think and you, Fidel, and your organization has laid out a pretty comprehensive blueprint for transitional justice in Syria. Most of these plans, including yours, always require a truth commission for very good reason. And yet, we know from a lot of academic research, including some by my own co-director here, Carrie Wiggum, that truth commissions can make a measurable contribution to non-recurrence if they're designed according to practices that will prevent them from being politically captured. And those practices have to be different in every society. I think, Assad, what I heard you saying was that one way to prevent a Syrian Truth Committee from simply being captured by politics is to grant a lot more authority to civil society actors. And I wanted to just very quickly, all five of you, weigh in on that question. I mean, again, the cynical view would be, if civil society actors were responsible for a truth commission, then we can expect 5 or 7 different truth commissions, each with its own mandate and its own version of events. Whereas if it's a government-led truth commission, then we might get very little, if anything, that resembles something like a one with broad-based civilian and especially victim participation. How do we thread the needle here? How do we, what are the most promising things? Hang on one second. We're going to do a little bit of a circle. What kind of composition of a truth commission, and what kind of strategies do you, all 5 of you, feel would sort of split the difference between these 2 alternatives? And maybe Bassam, I'll ask you to begin, and then go to Razan, and then Beth, and then we'll end with Assad and Fadel.
Yeah, thank you again. I think I will express myself better in Arabic, if is it possible. يعني قبل الحديث عن موضوع اللجان الحقيقة وهيدا اللجان على أهميتها، يعني لحد هلا كل ما يعني تقريبا يوميا عم نشوف تقريبا اعتقال أشخاص كانوا يعني جزء من آلة النظام القمعية أو ناس متهمين بارتكاب جرائم الحرب.
Unfortunately, Bassam, I don't think that our interpretation function is actually working. So I hate to do it, but if you wouldn't mind using English, I think that for most of
it's okay.
not all, but most
just
of our,
like because try to like deliver my message as it is exactly. But what I try to say that like every day we hear kind of like arrest of like people. The government announced that it's belonged to the former regime. So far until now, we never heard about any single case of people who did also violation by other parties of the conflict during either we are speaking about like SDF, we like ISIS, SNA. Instead, most of, as I referred like in my first part of intervention, that most of like a lot of people who are like became part officially of this government, there is already dozens of reports against them as like people who committed crimes. So the way that like this government designed what's so-called like the step of transitional justice, it's kind of like based, it's very selective. It's just like based on what like it was a funny term in Arabic, say من يحرر يقرر, or like person who's like liberating, deciding, something like that. So even like if I agree partially with my colleague Assad that we should hold like Assad Shibani accountable because of his word, but if you observe like their like reaction about like dialogue and the constitutional declaration, whenever also people ask them about the national dialogue, they say that they did a national dialogue, but for the people who are not Syrian, maybe they don't know that it was like very selective, it was not inclusive. And I'm afraid that something will be also repeated when we are speaking now about upcoming, I think it should be this week or the next, the committee of the transitional justice. Again, like if you compare, you know, what they are saying and what's going on the ground, there is a huge gap. What I wish from any kind of like truth to be saying, I just like wish to see it like more inclusive, because we have different narratives in Syria. We have 4 to 5 to 6 narratives by different groups. And there was like a very famous report by the Commission of Inquiry. I think it was like a few years ago. The title was something like "No Clean Hands" in Syria. It was, I think, like 4 or 5 years before from now. So now there is a great chance for all of us as Syrian people, and as civil society also, as Syrian people, we have rights to be part of this process. What's happening that most of our like colleagues, people who have a lot of knowledge, like my colleague Fadl, Assad, Razan, and dozens of other colleagues, most of them, they're like excluded. Again, the people that are like appointed, mainly they are close to the HTS, and they also close to the current government, and they are ideologically close to them. So unfortunately, maybe it's not like, I'm not very optimistic, but I think we are very far from at least what we learned from the books about transitional justice.
But Sam, hold on. We have friends in the current Syrian government. So not every person in the current Syrian government is affiliated with HTS. We need to be very careful about what we're saying. 6 ministers are personal friends of mine. I know they're not HTS.
Likewise, yeah.
I know they're not HTS affiliated.
Yeah.
Half of the Syrian Foreign Ministry are personal friends of mine. I know they're not HTS affiliated. So
they are secular.
Right? I mean, I mean, we need to be very careful about how we're brushing, or generalizing, because that can have direct consequences on the status of people. So we need to be very
How
careful.
many are women, ya Assad? How many are
We have a
women?
minister.
All those friends
We
you're
don't have a lot
talking
of
about.
We don't have a lot of women. That's a that's
Yeah.
reality. But how many
That's
women
a
are,
problem, actually.
in the US government today?
Mhm.
So, I mean, yes, I understand. Of course, we have a gender issue in Syria. Nobody can deny that. But did you really expect al-Nusra to put a Syrian Christian women in a government position? They did.
Yeah.
Now, is it good? No, it's not enough. But
It's not enough, but it's
from an
good.
ideological perspective, guys, we're talking about a former jihadi Al-Qaeda style
Mhm.
group appointing a Syrian Christian woman as a
Mhm.
minister. And with full authority. We're seeing what kind of authority she has since she
Mhm.
came to, since she
Mhm.
joined the transitional government. So, but
Even they
that's
accepted
not
Hamza. Hamza, like, also he's far away
I
from
mean
HTS,
that
yani, as
that's
an
that,
example.
that's not my point. What I was trying to say is there are elements that exist within the current Syrian authorities that are our allies. We should not alienate them. We should find ways to connect with them, support them, and lobby with them against whatever we don't like that the Syrian authorities are doing today. And that's why I was trying to suggest a parallel truth commission process, Max, because if we're going to wait for the Syrian government to do something, we're going to wait
Mhm.
for. So it's up to us, really, and the space is open. Yes, there is no space, Fadl, for political parties. I absolutely
Yeah.
agree. There isn't a single space for that. But for civil society, you know better than I do that the space is still open. I don't know how long it would be open
Yeah,
for.
it's open,
It's
but
still
it's
very
like if it's established without a mandate, even if we like as a civil society, if we reveal the fate, we used to reveal the fate for thousands of the missing person, but it will not take in consideration as a powerful as if it is coming from the government or semi-government when it's coming from like a transitional justice body. So so
That's
this
why I
is the
said in tandem,
differentiation.
Mhm.
Yeah,
in
that
tandem, in
differentiation.
parallel, in
Yeah.
tandem, in collaboration.
Yeah, even in parallel, like we are doing that, but we need to, and as Max said, maybe establishing how many like truth committee. Okay, we don't like this. It's better a little bit to wait to see what how is the plan, and also to follow, keep demanding, keep calling about establishing a body, because this should be a process, an organized one. Like if we took just the pieces revealing the fate or commission or truth, and it's like it's a process. It should be accountability. It should be truth. It should be redressing and working all of those together. It should be reformation. The committee should call for reformation, the jurisdiction reformation, because it will work under this umbrella. It should refer to the court. This is a complex process. Like if we took only why you took this the that revealing or the truth commission. Okay, why you didn't take the reconciliation? Why you didn't take like why you didn't take how about the documentation, or how about to, so there is a lot of question. We choose this one and we will work on the missing person. Okay, how about the other victims, the HLP or the enforced disappearance? We don't want always to focus on the missing person and the detainees. How about the other type of victims? So it's better to be designed by and then to be managed by the government, and it should be a comprehensive one. The mandate of the committee, when it should start, which date. Okay, one committee choose to work on since 1980, since Hama massacres. The other one choose to start from 2011. So we don't have this actually luxury to we need to focus, because we faced a tremendous amount of violations, and if we establish like that, I'm afraid that it might be a conflict
Yeah.
between those. It's better to be focused, and it's better to engage in design this process, and this process should work simultaneously. because we have a lot of work, and this revealing the fate, we need the collaboration with the ICMP, the international.
Okay. Raza, thank you.
Without those, we cannot work, because we need to work on the graves. If the government prevent us to visit the grave, if the government, sorry, 1 minute only. Why I insist the establishment to come by the parliament, because when the law being established, it will enforce all the government institution to collaborate with the transitional justice body, so that they will provide documents. They will not prevent us to visit the mass grave. They must collaborate, and we need to go to the jail and to see who is there from the previous regime, to conduct an investigation with them. They need to facilitate all of that. So this is a whole process. I call for that. I don't like. I respect your opinion, but I don't like to take it piece by piece. So this is just my point.
Razan, thank you. Razan and Beth, now we're really getting into a very interesting discussion here about the political, but also the logistical and even ethical process of composing and running a truth commission. Beth, I'll get to you in a second, because I'd love to hear your view about comparative best practices, especially in the region. But Razan, how do you stand on this question of the prospects for creating a truth commission, whether directly through the Syrian interim government or through a much more inclusive civil society focused process that will be, at least in theory or on paper, I suppose, more resistant to political capture and instrumentalization than so many truth commissions that we've seen in the past?
Thank you, Max. I just wanted to note a couple of things. Like in January, 51 Syrian organizations working on transitional justice met in Damascus. 51. If you can go on the SyriaCampaign.org website and check the recommendations that they made. So yes, you're talking about a possibility of how many truth commissions, etc. But honestly, in comparison with other contexts, the Syrian civil society, despite all of its differences, is well organized. I remember having to, our communications director, Ranim, and I, thank you, having to put 51 logos in literally one Instagram post, which is...
That's a great problem to have.
Exactly. And this is amazing. And honestly, I just want to, tell our audience, if they don't know about this, Syrian victim and family associations have been organizing since 2018. 10 victims and family associations wrote something called the Charter for Truth and Justice. Because of that, and because of very well organized advocacy of those victim and family associations that come from diverse backgrounds, that are, that have different perpetrators that impacted their livelihoods and life, and, have put together this vision and an institution for the missing under the UN General Assembly mandate was created. Those are great, in my opinion, are great examples that we can coordinate, we can organize. And you mentioned something about strategies. I honestly believe that civil society is beyond the organizations or, the groups that are, for sure we know, need a lot of, but Syrian, we've managed to operate besieged areas since 2011, where the Assad regime was besieging whole areas. Schools operated without resources. There's a will in the community. I hate to be like this, I'm bringing this only the positive energy, but there's a will in the community to be active citizens. And you go in the streets today and you see how many people want to speak to the media, I do think all of that is very important, and a vision that is definitely civil society led, victim and survivors led, for a truth commission that is somehow built with them is not, I don't see it's very difficult. And I just want to end by also noting how our transitional justice process did not start only with the fall of the Assad regime, going back to my earlier comments, with all the works of those groups, but also with arts and culture, like film screening. If you haven't watched Action for Sema, it's an amazing film about attacks on hospitals. Artists, filmmakers today and in the past, 14 years have been very active, and I see that's very critical in any truth commission. Drama and soap opera in Syria are very, very popular. How can we start as civil society actors, but also, I hope one day, like even this, this government or any government that I personally elect in fair and, transparent elections, also employs all of this in our bigger, transitional justice, pathway, but also note that today, and I would love to hear also from Beth about different examples. We live in an online world. We are very, very impacted by disinformation, misinformation, and by hate speech online. And, it's again not a conversation to put this current government under the attacks, but they are not halting hate speech, and it is impacting, the justice mechanisms and the peace in Syria.
It certainly played a direct role in the attacks on Druze communities earlier this month, didn't it? This is
exactly it's at the heart of
almost
it. So
certainly fabricated disinformation about Druze clerics insulting the Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, so I just maybe to say, how do we also finally ask, maybe to hand over to Beth, how do we also look at all of this in this world that we live in? It's maybe, I know like nothing is like, we definitely need to learn a lot from different experiences, but literally families were finding, like looking at photos of unfortunately dead bodies on Telegram. And this regime and this government have been only communicating until in Telegram until yesterday. Finally, we do have a public, television channel, and influencers online, like claim to be journalists, are also, feeding into this narrative of what justice mean, what a truth commission would look like. And I think if we don't, somehow partner with those like non-traditional actors in transitional justice, such as arts and culture and the media, we will fail in our mission if we were part of this mission as civil society actors. And I'll end here.
Thank you, Ambassador Beth.
Yeah, just a little bit of history. The idea of a truth commission really emerged primarily in Latin America as those societies transitioned from periods of authoritarianism and conflict into a more democratic system. And accountability, legal judicial accountability, was unavailable because a blanket amnesty had been imposed, in part as a sort of part of the deal around the transition. And so in many respects, truth commissions emerged as a sort of consolation prize, right? We can't give you justice, but we'll give you truth. We now have learned that truth commissions add a lot of value in and of themselves when done in parallel with justice processes, in parallel with reparative processes, and they can often open space for reconciliation. So there's a lot of work that a truth commission can do. Historically, they have all been relatively formalized. They've had some sort of governmental or even multilateral imprimatur. So in El Salvador, you had a United Nations Truth Commission. Most other truth commissions have been developed by the government. But one way to add some legitimacy is to think about hybridization. And Fadel already mentioned the idea of a hybrid court, but are there some international individuals who have high moral standing who could be invited to serve as commissioners alongside their Syrian counterparts? So who is the Archbishop Desmond Tutu of Syria? That person needs to be on the Truth Commission, and it needs to be broadly reflective of the beautiful mosaic that is Syrian society. That's another way to ensure that this Truth Commission has legitimacy and what they produce at the end in terms of both a report about causes and consequences of the conflict, but also recommendations, that those will have real value. I would worry about something that would be purely civil society driven, because you would get a kind of fragmentation, and that is not useful. One thing that's interesting about the Syrian context is, and we've touched on it a bit here, is there have already been terabytes of documentation produced. So information exists about what happens. It exists in the Commission of Inquiry. The IIIM has been consolidated information. Civil society groups, as Razan has so powerfully described, have been incredibly active. They've really upped their game. They've revolutionized doing open source investigations and relying upon digital artifacts of atrocity. All of this is available. And so now the work of the Truth Commission is to weave that together to produce a historical memory that can be trusted by the Syrian populace, but also more broadly within the region and elsewhere, and also provide a space for victims to bear witness in a formalized process where their testimony will become part of the official archived history of Syria. Survivors have given testimony, many of them dozens of times, to journalists, to local civil society groups, to international organizations. But to put that into a formalized record and to have that acknowledged, I think is something that a Truth Commission can do, especially because we know that justice can never be comprehensive. Every victim will not have their day in court. It's impossible. If there is some sort of a hybrid tribunal, which I think is a very valid proposal, and we should maybe transition to that eventually, it will only probably be able to take on emblematic cases. Even if the new interim authorities decide to refer the matter to the ICC or accept retrospective jurisdiction, again, the ICC would only have the ability to take a handful of cases, and usually those sort of most responsible. And so, you know, to deliver justice more broadly, we're going to need other institutions. We're going to need to think about reparations, think about opening space for reconciliation, knowing that it's victims that own reconciliation, it cannot be imposed on them, and then having some sort of a truth-telling process where they can bear witness and ideally also hear from perpetrators. So perpetrators have an opportunity to discuss their own involvement and what motivated them, what forms of duress that they were under, and if they feel like they want to cleanse their conscience, it's an opportunity for them to do that and to maybe accept responsibility and then think about how they can give back to society. So Colombia is really, I think, at the cutting edge of this work now, thinking about alternative sentences, community service, et cetera, for low to mid-level perpetrators who want to be reintegrated into society. They don't want to be known as perpetrators their entire life, but there may not be a complete justice process. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Bassam,
I agree.
Bassam, you had your.
I just like try to say something very clearly, because I of course I didn't mean that like all the people in the new government that are like belong to the HTS, but if you see Assad, like the main positions of this government, around between 65 to 70% of those like ministries in the key positions, they are belong, whether it's to HTS or they came from the government, like was like controlling agents. So are speaking
the Salvation Government.
Exactly. So are speaking about the Ministry of Interior, Defense, and we have some other. So what I'm trying to say, this is as a Syrian, it's an old game. The Assad regime was very smart of using this kind of shit. I'm very respectful Qabawat. She's also my friend. But if you see like sometimes like the conversation of the people, the pro-regime, sometimes they use her as a woman, sometimes they use her as a Christian, and sometimes they use her as a representative from civil society. So what I'm trying to say, that this government, they're playing an old game, played by unfortunately by Assad regime, played by the Syrian opposition when they used few Kurds in different occasions. What I'm trying to say, that this like government and other like bodies, they are not real, there is no real representation. Of course, I didn't mean that there is some colleagues in everywhere, but we are speaking about like, like small percentage, and they don't really have this, like they cannot take any strategic decision regarding to our future of our country.
Yeah.
So just like I wanted to be just like, we should be careful because there are these like authorities, including the self-administrations and northeast part of Syria, they use this like tool. So I'm just like trying to say that, of course, we just like need to be like sure that they don't play this game against us.
May I respectfully disagree? Because first, the majority of ministers in the current Syrian government are not HTS affiliated. That's one. Two, all ministers have full power within their ministry. They're appointing whoever they want, and they are presenting their plans as is to President Shara. We like them, we don't like them, that's a different story. But they are doing, they're doing what they're being asked to do. Whether we're talking about the telecom minister, whether we're talking about the Minister of Economy, the Minister of Social Affairs, the governor of the Central Bank of Syria is a former EY partner. So he's definitely not HTS affiliated, and et cetera, et cetera. And I can go on and on with the list of key decision makers, whether on the economic front, the finance, of course, whether on the economic front or on the social affairs front. They're all empowered, they're doing what they're being asked to do, and they're doing it independently. On the political side, I absolutely agree with you and Fadl. It's terrible. It's terrible. No political parties exist. No political parties, I think, will be allowed to exist. So we're definitely going into a one-party.
They mentioned that they will
yeah, but I mean,
allowed.
it looks like we're going into a one-party state. Now, in terms of representation, that's a much.
I think they will allow parties.
We'll see. I mean, this is debatable, but in terms of representation, this is a very, very difficult conversation because who is representative of the Alawites? I mean, who is the representatives of the Sunnis? Does HTS represent you, Fadl? As far as I know, they don't represent me either, and I'm not sure they represent Razan. Let's put it that way. So the issue of representation, as long as you don't have free and fair elections, will always be a subjective perception. There is no way of measuring objectively representation in any.
But you are sending a message if you like.
Exactly.
You need to send a message, a political message
to those minorities. A Christian, an Alawite, a Kurd,
yes, you need
a woman, etc., etc. It's okay. It's a
check. A woman? A woman?
I'm getting to that. It's a check the box. It's a check the box exercise. But
I think we need
it. In terms of representation, of course it's needed. But in terms of representation, is it representative? Is it acceptable that a government anywhere in the world, not only in Syria, only has one woman? No, of course it's not acceptable.
بل هو مقبول لأي حكومة في العالم، ليس فقط لسوريا، أن يكون فيها امرأة واحدة فقط بالطبع ليس مقبولا. اسمحوا لي أن أتحدث، هل تسمعونني؟ ليس الموضوع مسألة حكومة وامرأة واحدة. أنا أعرف أن هذا هو ليس الموضوع، ولكن أعتقد أن دور المرأة من ناحية العدالة.
We're getting only the Arabic interpretation again. I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
Can you stop?
We're only speaking English, so.
Yeah, I know. But for some reason we keep getting. Razan, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now? Like
yes,
in English?
That's better.
So I just wanted to say,
please
can we ask our interpreters just to stop, please, because you're talking now over the English. Go ahead, please, Razan.
Like to stop using this example of a woman, like we do have, I know this is not the topic, but it is actually the topic, because if you ask me,
it's a great topic to get to. I
about the strategies, it is women. Like, just please, like if women are allowed to lead this transitional justice process, that would, actually help us reach somewhere. And the problem is we continue to use this like a woman, but we are seeing so many indicators that are about civic engagement, civil attacks on civil liberties in the country day after day, whether the media faces, whether attacks on feminists in there were like in clerks are talking about how feminism is a crime today, which I mean like everywhere. But we are seeing so many indicators whether from this government today or like or the supporters fora like online. So for me, it's not only about like, having one representative. It is about like how involved we are as women who've been active and fighting
not only the women,
in just
Azan,
thinking about solutions and yeah.
They are not.
Just to clarify myself very quickly, when I said a woman, that wasn't a positive statement.
Yes.
That was a negative.
Right.
The fact that there's only one woman. That's why I said a woman.
Yeah, but
Right?
I mean what I was
meant it
trying
in
to
the,
say.
I meant, just to be clear, I meant it in a negative way,
It was
not in a
clear.
positive. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a clear, Asad. No need like to check your background, but like here I want to jump in to say that if they want to succeed in this path, especially they want to engage the civil society organization. Okay, maybe they can exclude us in the political level, but in justice and accountability, they cannot if they want to succeed. If not, that's that other issue. And I want to go back to what Assad was highlighted, like another committee or establish another one. No, there is like another role civil society can play, Assad, if they but not establish a committee to reveal a truth and a truth committee. What does the civil society can do here? They can work as an organization and they can monitor the work of the Transitional Justice Committee. They can criticize, they can keep commenting, they can reporting about, and also they can continue their work actually in the civil society limitation. It's better to be, as I mentioned, but we will continue to revealing the fact, to try to reach the document we have, and we will keep reporting about that. We have we will report to the media, so we have our channels. It's better to be as Ambassador Beth mentioned. It's better to be a uniform under umbrella and to work with the civil society as a partner, as a key here. I don't notice civil society at all in all of the previous process. Where is the civil society? Where is those famous organization, or not famous, or expert organization? Where is those? Why civil society should be not only the woman, Razan, but civil society also, and the woman for sure in this with the civil society. But we are not noticing that. Where is the civil society? Civil society should play a key role in the transitional justice in this period. It should be included in every point in the dialogue. Okay, in this committee, the cost committee, investigation one, in the committee, this committee to draft the temporary constitution, civil society should monitor, should be as an organization, not individual. Okay, they care about individual. They keep calling individual. If they have organization, we are not being called. So we should be as a civil society. Here, I want to highlight also the final point that they cannot actually build a data or experience like we have 14 years. They need to build on what we have. For example, here one final point. Those we have a data for alleged perpetrator. They can build on it and they can issue a legal warranty by the Attorney General. It should be a legal one based on those accusation we have. We have a solid evidence, so we can facilitate via our cooperation, and we need nothing. But I don't know and I don't understand why they keep neglecting us. And here also I have another point which is highlighted by those criminal who's been witnesses and been like given forgiveness, I can say, or even reconciliation, but based on what? Where is the transparency? If there is a deal, the president and they need to address that, and they need to explain it to the victims. Otherwise, when the victims keep noticing those perpetrator freely walk around, and unfortunately, I can say and I can announce that there is a sales of revenge being established in Syria to take their rights by their own hand. If this path didn't being managed by the government correctly, so we will, because Syria past 14 years subjected to intensive violations, incomparable one with maybe a lot of other conflicts, extrajudicial killing. I don't want to nominate that, but that mean if those didn't healed, if didn't like treated well, that mean revenge is the only option in between the victims themselves.
We are almost, thank you. We are almost out of time. I did want to have one quick final sort of lightning round, if I can, and it's based on a question that Gregory Stanton, the founding director of Genocide Watch, has asked, and that is, and it follows from a lot of things that we've been talking about, that the transitional justice and prevention in Syria is truly a 21st century context because it is taking place in a far more interconnected, globalized, and intercommunicating world than any other transitional justice process. We've touched on this in terms of information technology and documentation, of online misinformation and disinformation. But let's talk about it in terms of the following question. And I started cynically, so I'm going to try to end very optimistic. Isn't it possible that through some combination of Syrian civil society, both in the diaspora and nationally, and the Syrian government, isn't it possible that a globalized civil society can help transitional justice in Syria learn best, or at least better practices from all the different transitional justice programs and efforts that have gone on before? We now have increasing amounts of research and practical experience of certainly of things that don't tend to work, right? And a certain amount of evidence that things do tend to work. What can we tell the Syrian government? What is your message to the Syrian government that you think would motivate them to look beyond the borders of Syria and to draw on a global 40 or 50-year experience of civil society practices in order to identify how their approach can both bring justice to victims and reduce the risk of atrocity and violence? So this is our lightning round. And we're going to start with Ambassador Beth, and then I'm just going to go right around the screen.
No, it's a terrific question. We now have, as you mentioned, 50 years of empirical longitudinal research, plus really deep and rich case studies of individual societies. And we know that there are a number of models that are available that have different degrees of hybridization, different degrees of different ways in which mechanisms can be sequenced. And all of this can be adapted for the Syrian context, but it has to be locally driven. And so this is where having an open dialogue with the various communities within Syria and creating a process that's genuine and inclusive and participatory for that to happen. It's so sad in a way, and I see some former colleagues here, that my office, this is what we tried to do. We would convene meetings of activists from Ethiopia, Colombia, Cambodia, and then we would get out of the way and let them talk amongst themselves. Here's what we did. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Don't do this, whatever you do. And the colleagues that were on the receiving end of some of those dialogues could say, I love that idea, but wouldn't it work better if we did X? Or we have a local dispute resolution mechanism. Maybe we could tweak it and embed it within a larger transitional justice process in order to be more responsive to the local cultural context. So there's much that can be learned. Unfortunately, it takes funding and it takes diplomatic support. And so I think that's going to have to come from Europe and elsewhere, because my office sadly appears to be on the chopping block.
Yes,
Over.
thank you. Bassam Al-Ahmad.
Yes, and so mainly you ask about like kind of like a recommendation to the government, or
in 3 sentences.
3 sentences?
Imagine that the government is going to do exactly what you tell them in terms of
I think like inclusion is like my keyword. I think like every step should be, like inclusion should be the title, including minorities, women, like Democrats, people, part of that. They should stop the violation against Syrian people, against minority, and especially the hate speech and the sectarian speech. I think they can call now for a real national dialogue where we all, as individual, as group, as parties could be. This is our country. We should be part in the shaping future of our country. This constitutional declaration, again, all of us, we can participate in this new constitutional declaration. What I'm calling for is like an inclusion, representative track. If we are speaking about transitional justice or dialogue or any aspect in the future of our country, inclusion, my only word and like keyword.
Thank you very much. Fadal Al-Dugani.
I have folder I can share. But okay, like for sure the authority at any time, at any moment, they can reform if they want. They can. Now, for example, they can like announce a government consultation with the president. Why the president didn't include a famous scholar such as Burhan Ghalioun as a consultant? So a consultation body can be nominated, or it's better to be a government body. Okay, the head remained the president, Ahmed al-Shara. The second step, I think that annexation or amendment for the temporary constitution, this constitution will like governing us for 5 years. I think this a prolonged period, and there is lots of controversial points in between the temporary constitution and this annexation or amendment should be built based as I mentioned. It should be an elected, or it should be a body, how to choose those who's gonna to draft that. The third point is the prolonged national dialogue, and this dialogue should be with those who we are disagree with them, not the one who we are agree as it's happened for, and should be extended for 4 years. The final point is to rely on the Syrian expert one, which they don't want to be part from the government. They don't want any position. They don't want any benefit, any photo, but rather than they want to share their experience, they love their country and they want this period to succeed actually, and because we need to move to another democratic period.
Thank you. Assad Alachi.
Well, very quickly, don't look at the region. It's terrible. The Lebanese model is terrible. The Iraqi model is terrible. And Israel-Palestine, it's a never-ending war. So we have no reference that is successful in the region to learn from. Look at Colombia, as was mentioned. Look at South Africa, Rwanda also could be a model to look at. But please, a general amnesty a la Libanaise, this is the worst recipe that can happen for Syria, and I'm worried that we're going that way, honestly. Second, I absolutely agree with everything that Bassam has said in terms of representation, inclusion, etc. But they're not buzzwords. So we're going to hold you accountable. If you're going to commit to inclusion, we're going to actually measure the level of inclusion in the government. We're going to measure the level of inclusion in any body, and inclusion across, as widely as inclusion can be. Representation, same issue. So Mr. Shibani, Mr. Al-Shara, and co, we're watching, and we're going to hold you accountable. And they need to know that. They need to know that when they're making public statements, there are actors that are actually taking what they're saying seriously and holding them to account for whatever they're saying. And third and last thing, and that's where the international community can help. One is knowledge sharing. That's absolutely needed. Two is funding, and thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Max, for bringing that up. With USAID being dismantled and the US probably getting out of the picture when it comes to human rights funding, we need Europe to step up. Because I don't think the Gulf monarchies are gonna, support a transitional justice process, just to be honest and clear. So we need Europe to step up, and we're not seeing that yet. And the third one is allow Syrians a chance to succeed. And for Syrians to have a chance to succeed, all sanctions need to be lifted on the Syrian government. All sanctions on the Syrian government need to be lifted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Razan Rashidi, we started with you, and so we'll let you have the last word to end our webinar for today.
What a responsibility. I think I agree with most of what the colleagues have said and stress the fact of not needing to invent the wheel per se, because we have been hearing a lot about Syria as a special case. We know that, context can differ, but there's a lot of learning, as Ambassador Beth have noted, from different contexts. So I stress the issue of learning from other experiences. And I maybe would end by, recognizing the very different experiences of Syrians in the past 14 years, but even before, and being human and just humility in admitting to past crimes. I haven't heard any government officials apologize to all the victims and the survivors, apologize for their own role, but also to start that, recognition of their experiences. And, again, as I started, I guess I would end by stressing the need to, work hand by hand with Syria's brilliant civil society to make sure that, because as many of us have noted, and as we've been doing in this conversation as well, we do have this eagerness to build a state, not to support a government, but to build a Syrian state. And I think there is a huge difference with that. And I have to agree with Assad that in order to build a state, lifting sanctions is important for all of us to, be able to be active and regain, our dignity as Syrians, but also to continue to play our basic role as civil society actors, which is playing a watchdog role to any government that will come, whether it's elected, appointed, or, open the door to the palace and just, took the chair in it. And thank you again, Max, for the interesting conversation.
So Razan Rashidi, Bassam Al-Ahmad, Beth Van Schack, Fadel Al-Bugani, Assad Al-Adshi, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing your thoughts and hopes and fears and plans for the future of your country. And thank you especially for the extraordinary work that you're all doing, which is so unbelievably valuable, not just for Syria, but for the broader region and and globally. So we're deeply appreciative. Thank you everybody out there who's stayed with us till the end. I know we ran a little bit over, but I hope that it was worth it for you. I wanted to thank our interpreters and the staff here at IGMAP. Please stay tuned to IGMAP's website for upcoming webinars and future events. If you'd like to be added to our mailing list, our listserv, to be alerted to upcoming events, please contact us and we'll be happy to do that. In the meantime, very best to all of you. Thanks again, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Have a lovely day. Bye.